Let me tell you something that took me 15 years of clinical practice to fully understand. The thing that makes a man want you, truly want you, not just notice you, has almost nothing to do with what you're wearing, how you look in a photo, or how hard to get you play. I've sat across from hundreds of couples in my office. I've listened to men describe, in their own words, the exact moment they knew they were falling for someone. And I promise you, it's never the moment you'd expect. Today, I'm going to walk you through 6 things, backed by real behavioral science, not folklore, that light up desire in a man's brain and keep it burning. Some of these will surprise you. One of them might completely change how you think about attraction. So stay with me because by the end of this video, you're going to understand male desire on a level most people never get to. Hi, I'm Dr. Lila Romano. I'm a urologist. And over the years, my practice has grown into something a little unusual. I don't just treat physical health. I spend a huge amount of my time talking to men and women about desire, connection, and what actually happens in the body and brain when attraction takes hold. I want to be upfront about something. This isn't going to be a video about tricks or games. I don't believe in manipulating anyone into liking you, and honestly, those tactics don't work long term anyway. I'll explain why later. What I do believe in is understanding the real psychological and physiological mechanisms behind male desire, so you can show up as the most magnetic, most authentic version of yourself. Because here's the truth, when you understand what's actually happening in a man's mind and body, you stop guessing, you stop overthinking, and you start attracting the kind of connection that lasts. So let's get into the science. The problem. Here's where most advice about attraction goes wrong. It focuses entirely on appearance, the right outfit, the right angle, the right amount of makeup. And look, I'm not going to pretend physical attraction doesn't matter. It does. It's part of being human. But here's what the research actually shows, and what I've seen over and over in real life. Physical attraction gets a man's attention. It is not what sustains his desire. Desire, real, sustained, can't stop thinking about her desire, is driven by something deeper. It's driven by psychological and emotional signals that his brain is wired evolutionarily to respond to. Think about it this way. You've probably known women who weren't conventionally the most beautiful in a room, but every man in that room was captivated by them. And you've probably also seen the opposite. Someone stunning who somehow doesn't hold anyone's attention for long. That's not random. That's psychology. Desire is a brain state. It involves dopamine. It involves specific neural circuits tied to novelty and reward. And it involves something researchers call mate value signals, cues that unconsciously tell a man's brain this person is worth investing in. Once you understand what those cues actually are, you can stop guessing and start embodying them naturally. So let's break down the 6 things that most reliably trigger that response. Confidence that doesn't need validation. The first one, and honestly the most powerful one, is confidence. But I need to be very specific about what I mean, because this word gets thrown around a lot. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about being loud or dominant in a room. I'm talking about something much quieter and much more powerful. A woman who is comfortable in her own presence and doesn't need constant reassurance that she's wanted. Here's the psychology behind this. Human beings, and this is true across genders, but it shows up in a very specific way with men, are wired to value what appears scarce or self-sufficient. This isn't about playing games. It's about an actual evolutionary and psychological pattern. When someone doesn't seem to need external validation to feel secure, our brains read that as a sign of high value. Confidence signals stability. It signals that you have a rich internal world, that your happiness isn't dependent on someone else's approval. I remember a patient, I'll call her Maya, obviously not her real name, who came to me frustrated. She kept saying, "I do everything right. I'm attentive, I compliment him, I make myself available. Why does he keep pulling back?" And when we talked it through, the pattern became clear. Every interaction she had with this man was, on some level, seeking reassurance. Am I doing okay? Do you still like me? Was that too much? Here's the thing. Men can feel that even if they can't always articulate it. It creates a subtle pressure, and pressure is the opposite of desire. Desire needs space to breathe. I want to explain why this happens on a deeper level, because I think it helps to actually understand the mechanism instead of just being told, be confident, without context. When someone is constantly seeking reassurance, the other person's nervous system starts to register the relationship as a kind of ongoing obligation, almost a job where they have to keep managing another person's emotional state. That's exhausting for anyone, and exhaustion and desire cannot coexist. On the other hand, when you're with someone who feels solid and self-contained, there's no obligation. There's just the pure choice to be there, which feels completely different in the body and the brain. What I told Maya, and what I'll tell you, is that this isn't something you can fake for one evening and expect it to land, because people sense the difference between real security and performance. The real work happens upstream of the dating itself. It's building a life you're genuinely proud of, friendships that fulfill you, goals you're working toward, interests that have nothing to do with any man. When your sense of worth isn't tied to whether he texts back in 10 minutes or 2 hours, that security becomes visible in everything you do without you ever having to try. So, what does real confidence look like in practice? It looks like having your own life that's full, regardless of whether he's in it. It looks like being able to say what you think, even if it's not what he wants to hear. It looks like not immediately filling every silence in a conversation because you're anxious about the pause. Silence, by the way, is not something to fear. Comfortable silence is actually one of the strongest signals of security a person can give off. And here's the beautiful part. This isn't a performance you have to maintain. The goal isn't to fake confidence you don't feel. The goal is to build real security through your own goals, your own friendships, your own sense of identity, so that the confidence isn't an act. It's just who you are. And that authenticity is exactly what makes it so magnetic, because people can absolutely tell the difference between performed confidence and the real thing, being fully present. The second thing might be the most underrated one on this entire list, and it's this: being fully, completely present when you're with him. We live in a world of constant partial attention, phones buzzing, notifications, half our brain always somewhere else. And because of that, genuine, undivided presence has become incredibly rare, which means it has become incredibly powerful. Let me explain the psychology here. When someone gives you their full attention, really listens, really looks at you, really engages with what you're saying without being distracted, it activates something in the brain related to feeling valued and seen. Psychologists sometimes call this attunement. And attunement is deeply tied to desire because, on a primal level, being truly seen by someone feels like intimacy. It feels like closeness, even before anything physical happens. Think about the difference between two scenarios. In one, you're talking to someone and they're nodding along while glancing at their phone every 30 seconds. In the other, someone is looking at you, actually listening, asking follow-up questions, remembering details you mentioned earlier in the conversation. Which one do you feel more drawn to? Which one makes you feel like you matter? Men respond to this exact same dynamic. When a woman is fully present with him, not performing interest, but genuinely curious about him, genuinely engaged in the conversation, it creates a feeling of being uniquely important. And that feeling is intoxicating, because most people don't give each other that kind of attention anymore. Practically, this means a few things. Put the phone away when you're with him, not as a rule you're following, but because you actually want to be there. Ask questions and actually listen to the answers instead of planning what you're going to say next. Notice small details about him, the way he tells a story, what excites him, what he's proud of, and bring those details back up later. That single habit, remembering what someone told you and referencing it later, is one of the simplest and most effective ways to make a person feel deeply valued. I had a patient once tell me about a first date that didn't seem particularly remarkable on paper. Dinner, conversation, nothing dramatic. But weeks later, the man told her the exact moment he knew he wanted to see her again. It wasn't a joke she made or an outfit she wore. It was that, halfway through dinner, she asked him a follow-up question about something he'd mentioned 20 minutes earlier, a small detail about his relationship with his brother. He said, in his own words, "Nobody really does that. That's how low the bar has become for genuine attention, and that's exactly why it stands out so powerfully when someone offers it." There's also a subtler layer to presence, and it's about not rushing to fill space. A lot of us, especially when we're nervous, feel the urge to keep talking, to keep the energy up, to avoid any lull in conversation. But comfortable silence is actually a sign of two people who are relaxed enough with each other not to perform constantly. Learning to sit in a natural pause without anxiety, just being there, present, unhurried, communicates a level of ease that talking nonstop never can. Presence also means being present with your own emotions. Don't perform happiness you don't feel. Real presence includes emotional honesty, being willing to say, I had a rough day, instead of masking it with a forced smile. Ironically, that vulnerability, delivered with self-assurance, builds far more connection than pretending everything is perfect all the time. Playfulness and humor. Number 3, playfulness. And I want to talk about why humor and lightness are so much more powerful in building desire than people realize. From a clinical standpoint, laughter does something measurable in the body. It releases endorphins, it lowers cortisol, your stress hormone, and it creates a shared positive emotional state between two people. That shared state is called positive affect synchrony in psychological research, and it's one of the strongest predictors of relationship satisfaction and attraction that we have data on. But beyond the biology, here's what playfulness communicates on a deeper level. It signals emotional intelligence, it signals that you don't take yourself too seriously, and it signals safety. A man who is laughing with you, teasing you a little, being teased back, that's a man whose nervous system is relaxed around you. And a relaxed nervous system is essential for desire to flourish, because desire cannot coexist with tension or anxiety in the same way. I often tell my patients, the couples who last, who keep desire alive for years and even decades, are almost always the ones who still make each other laugh. Not performed jokes, real, spontaneous playfulness, gentle teasing, inside jokes, the ability to be a little silly together. Here's a practical example. Instead of responding to something he says with a flat, serious answer, try playing with it a little. If he says something slightly arrogant as a joke, instead of taking it seriously, tease him back, lightly, warmly. Oh, is that so? With a raised eyebrow does more for chemistry than a paragraph of compliments ever could. Playfulness creates a kind of push and pull, a light tension that keeps things interesting without ever tipping into game playing or manipulation. It's simply two people enjoying each other. And I want to be clear, this only works when it comes from genuine enjoyment, not from a script. You can't force chemistry, but you can create the conditions where it naturally emerges, and lightness is one of the biggest ones. There's also a physiological piece worth mentioning here. When we laugh with someone, our heart rates and breathing patterns actually begin to sync up slightly. Researchers have measured this. It's a small thing, but it's part of why shared laughter creates such a strong sense of we're on the same wavelength. That feeling of being in sync is one of the earliest, most primal markers of compatibility that the brain registers, often long before either person consciously decides they're attracted to the other. I'll also say this, playfulness is not the same as sarcasm or constant joking that keeps everything at arm's length. There's a difference between lightness that draws someone closer and humor that's used as a wall to avoid real vulnerability. The goal isn't to be funny all the time. It's to have moments of genuine ease and delight together, mixed in with the deeper conversations. It's the contrast between the two, depth and lightness, that makes a connection feel rich rather than one note. Before I go further, if you're finding this valuable, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more women who need this information, and it costs you nothing. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. I post new videos every week on relationship psychology, attraction science, and health topics that most people are too embarrassed to ask their doctor about. Also, drop a comment below and tell me, which one of these 6 so far resonates with you the most? I read every comment, and sometimes I even turn your questions into future videos. Okay, let's continue. Emotional safety and non-judgment. Number 4 is one that doesn't get talked about enough, and it's emotional safety. Specifically, being someone a man feels he can be honest with, without fear of judgment or criticism. This might surprise you because a lot of dating advice pushes the opposite idea, that men are attracted to a challenge, to unpredictability, to a woman who keeps them guessing. And listen, a little bit of mystery is healthy, and I'll touch on that later. But there's a difference between healthy mystery and constant emotional unpredictability. And the second one actually destroys desire over time rather than building it. Here's the science. When someone feels safe with you, meaning they can express a fear, admit a mistake, or share something vulnerable without being met with judgment, mockery, or a lecture, their brain associates you with safety and relief. And this matters enormously for desire, because chronic stress and anxiety literally suppress the neurochemical pathways involved in arousal and bonding. If a man feels like he has to be guarded around you, like every misstep will be criticized, his nervous system stays in a low-grade defensive state, and you cannot build deep desire on top of defensiveness. I've seen this pattern so many times in my practice. A woman will tell me, "He just doesn't open up to me." And when we look closer, it often turns out that in the past, whenever he did open up, shared an insecurity, admitted he was struggling with something, it was met with criticism or it was used against him later in an argument. Once that happens even a few times, people close off. It's self-protective and it's completely human. So how do you build this kind of safety? It starts with how you react to vulnerability. When he shares something difficult, resist the urge to immediately problem solve or criticize. Just listen first. Let him feel heard before you respond. Avoid contempt in your tone even when you're frustrated. Research on relationships consistently shows that contempt is one of the most corrosive things to intimacy that exists. And when he makes a mistake, address it with directness, yes, but without shaming him for it. When a man feels emotionally safe with you, something beautiful happens. He starts to actually show up as himself. And paradoxically, that authenticity, that lowered guard, is what creates the deepest desire of all. Because desire isn't just about excitement. At its most powerful, it's about wanting to be close to someone specifically because you can be your true self around them. I think a lot of women worry that being non-judgmental means being a pushover or accepting behavior that doesn't work for them. That's not what I'm describing at all. Emotional safety and having standards are not opposites. In fact, the healthiest version of safety includes honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. You can tell someone the truth, even a hard truth, without contempt, without shaming them for who they are. The difference is in the delivery and the intent. Safety means, I will always tell you the truth, and I will never use your vulnerabilities against you. That combination, honesty without cruelty, is exactly what allows a man to lower his guard around you without fear of being punished for it later. A sense of his own growth around you. Number 5 is a little more subtle, and it's this. Men are deeply drawn to women who inspire them to become a better version of themselves. This isn't about changing him or trying to fix him. That almost always backfires. And I want to be really clear about that distinction. This is about something different. Being around a woman whose own standards, warmth, and way of engaging with the world naturally makes a man want to rise to meet her. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as the Michelangelo effect, the idea that in healthy relationships, partners sculpt each other into their ideal selves simply through how they see and treat one another. Here's how this plays out. If you consistently see the best in him, not in a naive, ignore red flags way, but in a way where you genuinely acknowledge his effort, his strengths, his growth, something shifts in how he shows up. People tend to rise to the identity that's reflected back at them. If you make him feel capable, respected, and admired for the right reasons, he starts wanting to actually be that person, more and more, specifically around you. This also connects to your own standards. Men are drawn to women who have a clear sense of what they value and what they won't tolerate, not as an ultimatum, but as a quiet, lived reality. When you have your own standards for how you want to be treated and you hold them calmly and consistently, it does two things. First, it filters out men who aren't actually capable of meeting you where you are. And second, for the right man, it creates genuine motivation. There is something deeply attractive about a woman worth stepping up for. Practically, this looks like genuinely celebrating his wins instead of downplaying them. It looks like acknowledging effort, not just results, telling him you noticed how hard he worked on something, not just praising the outcome. And it looks like maintaining your own personal growth, your own goals and passions, so that the relationship has two people continually becoming more themselves, rather than one person orbiting the other. I've noticed something interesting in my practice over the years. The men who talk about their partners with the most obvious admiration and desire almost always describe some version of the same thing. She makes me want to be better, and not because she asks me to, but just because of who she is. That's the Michelangelo effect in action, and it's not something you manufacture through pressure or expectation. It emerges naturally when you hold yourself to a standard, treat him with genuine respect when he earns it, and stay honest about what you need. Men, just like women, are drawn toward growth. Nobody wants to stay stagnant forever, and being with someone who quietly calls out your best qualities again and again is one of the most compelling forms of attraction there is. Physical warmth and touch, the science of connection. And the sixth thing, and I saved this one for near the end because I think it's the most misunderstood, is physical warmth, not in the way most people assume. I'm talking about touch, proximity, and physical affection in the context of emotional connection. Let's talk about the actual physiology here because I think it's fascinating. When two people who are emotionally connected engage in physical touch, even something as simple as a hand on the arm, a hug, sitting close together, the body releases oxytocin. Oxytocin is often called the bonding hormone, and it plays a critical role in building attachment and trust between people. It also, interestingly, tends to increase feelings of desire and connection, because emotional bonding and physical desire are far more intertwined in the brain than most people realize. They're not separate systems. They feed into each other. Here's what's important, though. Touch and physical closeness are far more powerful when they're layered on top of the emotional connection we've already talked about. Presence, safety, playfulness, rather than used as a substitute for it. Physical affection without emotional safety often feels hollow or even uncomfortable. But physical affection built on a foundation of real connection amplifies everything. This doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as maintaining warm eye contact a beat longer than usual, a light touch on the arm during a conversation, sitting close enough that there's a natural, comfortable proximity between you. These small, consistent signals of physical warmth communicate interest and comfort with intimacy in a way that words often can't. And I want to say this clearly because it matters. None of this is about performing seduction. It's about genuine, comfortable physical presence, being someone who is warm and inviting in her body language, not closed off or guarded. That warmth, paired with everything else we've discussed, is what allows desire to move from an emotional and intellectual connection into something that feels fully alive. I also want to mention something from a clinical perspective because it ties everything together. Attraction and desire aren't purely psychological, and they aren't purely physical. They're deeply integrated. The nervous system doesn't separate emotional closeness from physical closeness, the way we sometimes talk about them as if they're two different categories. Feeling emotionally safe with someone actually changes how your body responds to their touch. That's why a hand on the arm from someone you deeply trust can feel completely different from the same gesture with someone you barely know. The context, the safety, the connection, all of it shapes the physiological response. So when people ask me, how do I create chemistry? My honest answer is, chemistry isn't something separate from connection. It's what connection feels like in the body, once safety and desire are both present at the same time, bringing it all together. So let's recap the 6 things that most powerfully drive a man's desire, according to the actual psychology and physiology behind attraction. Number 1, confidence that comes from genuine self-sufficiency, not validation seeking. Number 2, being fully present, giving someone your undivided, genuine attention. Number 3, playfulness, the lightness and humor that keeps a nervous system relaxed and connection alive. Number 4, emotional safety, being someone he can be honest and vulnerable with without fear of judgment. Number 5, inspiring his growth, not by trying to change him, but by holding your own standards and reflecting back his best self. And number 6, physical warmth, layered on top of real emotional connection, using the natural power of touch and closeness. Notice something about all 6 of these. Not one of them is about changing your appearance, playing games, or being someone you're not. Every single one of these is about deepening your own emotional maturity, presence, and security. And that is exactly why they work. Because real desire, the kind that lasts, isn't built on tricks. It's built on genuine connection between two people who feel safe, seen, and drawn to each other's real selves. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. You don't need to become a different person to be deeply desired. You need to become more fully yourself, more secure, more present, more emotionally open, more playful, more warm. Those qualities aren't things you fake. They're things you build over time, and I promise you, the effort is worth it. If this video helped you understand attraction a little more clearly, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more evidence-based videos on relationships and health, and leave a comment telling me your biggest takeaway. I read every single one, and your questions genuinely shape what I cover next. Until next time, take care of yourself, because the most magnetic thing you can ever be is fully, confidently you. I'll see you in the next video.